Okay, so it's time for a new build, and I've decided I'm going to do something a little bit different. After a string of projects that have had a few similarities, I'm going to try and do something that kind of breaks out of that a little bit. And looking back at what I've built over the years, it occurs to me that I've only actually built one proper bass. I know I built a bass 6 recently, but I see that as kind of a hybrid between a bass and a guitar. Also, I've kind of used pretty plain materials recently. I've either done stuff that's been solid colours or has used kind of reclaimed timber, pine in a couple of cases, and I feel it's time that I did something that's a little bit more luthery, if that makes sense. Something that pushes the boundaries a little bit and something that is going to look absolutely stunning. So to that end, I've been out and I've got myself some nice materials to work with. So I'll start working through those. And for the body, or at least the back of the body, I've got some mahogany. This is actually what's referred to as African mahogany or sapele. I've used it a lot. I really like it. It's nice to work with. It smells absolutely gorgeous whilst you're working with it and works really well in the context of a guitar. But that's just the back of the body. For the top, I've been out and spent a little bit of money, and I've got some really, really nice flamey maple that's going to go on the top. I don't know how well the flame comes out in this shot, but from where I'm standing, it looks really, really nice, and that's going to work beautifully for what I have in mind. In terms of body shape, it's going to be guitar shaped. It's going to be standard bass guitar shape. So if you think Stingray, jazz bass, P bass, something along those lines. So something with 2 horns. I might kind of alter the shape a little bit to suit what I want to do and to kind of work with this timber. There are some bits of the timber on either side that I wouldn't really want to be involved in the body, but I think I can get away without getting those in very much at all. To complicate matters with the body, and unusually for a bass, it's not something you see a lot of, I'm going to make this a thin line. So, like a thin line Telecaster, I'm going to cut the body to shape. I'm going to remove some very large chambers, top and bottom, solid central block for the pickups, the bridge, everything else to attach into, and then we'll make a top out of the flamey maple that will cover all of that up, and we'll end up with a sort of a semi-hollow body. And I will also put a couple of F-holes in there because I like F-holes and I think it'd look really nice, and it also means that I can get the electronics and the wiring and everything done without the need of control covers. Additional to that, the body will be bound, and for the first time, because you're going to hear that phrase a little bit on this build, I'm going to attempt to bind the F-holes as well. I've never done that on a build. I don't know how well it's going to work. I'm currently researching that quite strongly. Hopefully we can get a good job out of that. Another first I would like to achieve is to do some active EQ on this. On one of my recent-ish builds, I did put an onboard boost circuit, so I've kind of dabbled with the active element before. But on this one, I'd like to do like a 2-channel active EQ, so active treble and bass controls, just to make it a little bit more adaptable. And I would really love, if I can do it and if I can get what I need to do it, to actually build the active preamp myself. So I'm currently researching PCBs that I can get to actually do that, because I think that would be an interesting move as well. In terms of hardware, I'm going to try and stay pretty standard-ish. So I've got a Wilkinson bridge, brass saddles. I think I used that on my P-bass build and I was really, really happy with the way that that works. So I'm not going to try and reinvent the wheel with that. Pickups, I'm thinking potentially PJ configuration, so a mix between the precision and jazz bass setup, or potentially one single humbucker like you would find on a Music Man Stingray. That might work with the active EQ. We're going to be having a bolt-on neck, and for that I've again got some nice flamey maple, but it's going to be a multi-lam neck. I'm thinking two outside elements of maple with a mahogany strip down the middle to match the back of the body. Might use another timber for the strip. I don't know how well it would work, whether I need something that's going to match the mahogany or whether I can kind of put something that's contrasting in. Potentially I've got some purple heart or even zebrano I could use for that, or just good old-fashioned walnut. We're going to have angled headstock, so that's going to require a scarf joint, and it will be a rosewood fingerboard, and I've got this bit of rosewood which might just be big enough for a headstock veneer. We shall see. 2 tuners per side. I think that will all look absolutely lovely. I'm saying 34-inch scale length, and job will be a good one. In terms of the neck, obviously it's going to be bolt on, and when I say bolt on, I mean bolt on, because for the first time I'm going to attempt to use these threaded inserts in the neck with these stainless steel M4 set screws to hold everything together nice and securely. And I'm also going to go without a neck plate. I'll be putting individual ferrules in for these, again a first, and essentially that will be it. I've still got a little bit of design work to do. I need to kind of figure out in my head what I want this thing to look like, try and get it down on paper as best I can so I've got something to work from. But all that can be done as I'm moving forward with the project. The first thing I'd like to do is start working on the body, and to do that I need to do some preparation work on this mahogany for the back. And to begin with, I definitely need to do some work on getting it dimensionally correct. I want the body to be 1.75 inches thick, including the top, and at the moment this mahogany is a full 1.75 inches thick. So we need to remove about 6 millimeters in thickness from this by running it through the planer. Following that, I need to joint up the 2 mating surfaces, get it glued together, and then we can start working on it as an actual body blank. Now, unlike the last build where I imposed the limit of only using the tools that I had when I started building guitars, I'm going to do no such thing again on any of my other builds. It was a fun experiment, but it was also quite frustrating. On this build, I'm going to use every single tool available to me and potentially might even buy some more. So to that end, we will get the bench cleared off, we will get the planer out and start to work this down into some usable material. Okay, so I've just run those very quickly over the planer, and they are both kind of they're both very flat and straight. I'll just chuck my winding sticks onto that and give them a quick check, and there doesn't seem to be any twist in them either. So these are both ready now to go through the thicknesser and get them down to the correct thickness. That process really only kind of took a millimetre or so off the thickness, so we've still got a fair way to go. One is a little bit thicker than the other. This one's coming in at 44-ish mil, and this one is about 41. So we've got a little bit more work to do on this one than we have on the other, but the thicknesser will make very light work of that. Okay, so that's all gone through the thicknesser and it's down to the thickness that we want it, which in this instant is just a little bit over 38 millimeters. And I took the time to kind of run these faces through the planer as well, just to get them as kind of square and as straight as I can. And if I slot them together, they're not actually that far off, but there is a little bit of a gap in the middle. I don't know if you can see that there. It's only tiny, but obviously it's not what we want. Now this is the back, and I'm going to mark it as such, just so I know what I'm doing with it. Because I'm putting a drop top on this guitar, the joint needs to be absolutely spot on the back, but on the front, not quite so much. I'd like it to be good at the ends, so any visible kind of joint would be nice and tight. But if there's any kind of discrepancy on the other side of this in the middle, not that important because it is going to get covered up. Obviously, I want it as nice as possible for strength purposes. So to make sure that happens, I just need to get these fitting as close as possible. And I can see looking at it that there's kind of some additional material up this end of this short bit and maybe a little bit at the other end. And if I get a straight edge on and kind of sight through there, I can see that there is a little bit of a gap there. Whereas that one actually looks very straight. So I'm not going to do anything with that one, but I will drop this one into the vise. I've got my number 6 plane to hand. I've checked it is nice and sharp. So we'll just take a couple of passes down here and just keep checking to make sure we got that joint nice and tight. Okay, so I've just test clamped this together and we've got a great joint really along most of it, but there is a little bit of a gap in here which actually extends all the way to the end of this second board, which would mean that there's probably a little bit of a hump in this area. So I'll get these out again, get it back in the vise and just try and kind of go from here onwards and just take that bump out a little bit. And now we've established that kind of perfect joint that we wanted. It's just a case of gluing it up. So just stick that back in there. And it's literally a bit of regular tight bond is pretty much all we need. And then kind of pretty standard for one of my glue ups, I've got 3 sash cramps running down the centre of the workpiece, and we'll just kind of tighten them up a little bit to start with. And I've just got a couple more just to kind of stop stuff moving around too much. Just to keep everything nice and level. You can spend ages getting these joints kind of as perfect as you can, which in this case seems to have done. So we'll just get rid of much of that squeeze out as we can. Give that a check with a straight edge, and it's kind of pretty much where we need it. It's not perfectly flat, but we can soon kind of sort that out when we get it out of clamps. I did leave a little bit of extra meat on this blank, so we've got the scope to do that. But with this glued up, we're going to have to kind of give it at least a few hours to set up before we can do anything else. So I think that's probably as good a place as any to leave this video. So as always, don't forget to hit that like button if you've enjoyed this. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. It really, really would help the channel. And I'll look forward to seeing you in a few days' time when we can continue working on this body. But until then, thanks for watching. Bye.